The winter wind cut through Madison like 1,000 frozen knives, and Emma Chen pulled her threadbare coat tighter around her trembling body. Behind her, huddled against the glass window of a closed bakery, her 3 children pressed together for warmth, 7-year-old twins, Marcus and Maya, and little 4-year-old Sophie, whose lips had turned an alarming shade of blue. Emma's hands shook as she counted the coins in her palm for the 3rd time. $4.67. Not enough for a motel room. Not enough for proper meals. Barely enough for anything that mattered. The eviction had come so suddenly, 1 missed rent payment had turned into 2, then 3, and then the locks were changed. Her ex-husband had disappeared 18 months ago, leaving nothing but empty promises and mounting debts. Her part-time cashier job had evaporated when the store closed without warning. Now they had nowhere to go, and the temperature was dropping fast. "Mama, I'm cold," Sophie whimpered, her small voice barely audible above the howling wind. Emma knelt down, wrapping her arms around all 3 children, trying to share whatever warmth remained in her body. "I know, baby, I know. Just a little longer, okay? Mama's figuring something out." But the truth was she had no idea what to do next. The shelters were full. Her friends had their own struggles. Her parents had passed years ago. They were alone in a city of millions, invisible among the holiday, shoppers rushing past with bags full of gifts and faces full of purpose. That's when the sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The car looked out of place on this particular street, where the shops were modest and the buildings showed their age. The back door opened, and a man in his late 50s stepped out, wearing a charcoal cashmere coat that probably cost more than Emma had earned in 6 months. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his shoes gleamed despite the wet pavement. Alexander Thornton was on his way to a charity gala, the kind where wealthy people paid thousands of dollars per plate to feel good about themselves. He'd built his fortune in real estate and tech investments, turning a modest inheritance into a billion-dollar empire. He'd been to hundreds of these events, written countless checks and smiled for countless photos. But something made him tell his driver to stop. Maybe it was the way the mother was wrapped around her children, forming a human shield against the cold. Maybe it was the look of desperate determination in her eyes, the kind of look he'd seen in his own mother's face decades ago when they'd struggled after his father's death. Or maybe, after 61 years of life, something had finally cracked open in his carefully constructed world. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle them. Emma looked up, her eyes wary, pulling her children closer. "I'm not going to hurt you," Alexander said quietly, holding up his hands. I saw you here. Do you need help?" Emma's first instinct was to lie, to pretend everything was fine, to protect what little dignity remained. But Sophie's shivering had become violent, and Marcus was coughing in a way that scared her. Pride couldn't keep her children warm. "We're okay," she started, but her voice broke. "We just need—" She couldn't finish. Tears streamed down her face, freezing in the bitter cold. Alexander looked at the children, really looked at them, and saw the kind of suffering that no amount of charity galas could address. This was happening right now, right here, to real people with real names and real fears. "Come here," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "All of you." Emma hesitated, every warning about strangers echoing in her mind. "Please," Alexander added, and something in his tone, something genuine and aching, made her trust him. "Let me help." No strings. No conditions. Just let me help. 20 minutes later, they were in a suite at the Ritz-Carlton. Alexander had called ahead, and the staff had prepared everything: warm baths, fresh clothes, hot food. He stood in the living area while Emma got the children settled, speaking quietly on his phone, making arrangements, when Emma emerged from the bedroom where Sophie had finally stopped shivering and fallen asleep. She found Alexander had ordered room service: soup, sandwiches, hot chocolate, more food than they could possibly eat. "I don't understand," she said, her voice hoarse. "Why are you doing this?" Alexander was quiet for a moment, staring out at the glittering city lights. "When I was 8 years old, my father died suddenly. Heart attack. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep our apartment. I remember being hungry. I remember being cold. I remember the fear in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking." He turned to face Emma, and she saw that his eyes were wet. "One day, a man who owned the building where my mother cleaned offices. Found out about our situation. He paid for our rent for a year, paid for my school supplies. He didn't want recognition or thanks. He just said that someone had once helped him, and he was passing it forward. Alexander's voice cracked slightly. He died 5 years later, and I never got to truly thank him. I built my whole life on the foundation of that kindness, and I've been trying to figure out how to honor it ever since. Emma sank into a chair, overwhelmed. I can't repay you. I'm not asking you to, Alexander said firmly. But I'm going to ask you to let me do more than just tonight. I have properties, good properties, sitting empty. I have connections to job placement services. I have resources that I've been throwing at problems from a distance when what I should have been doing is looking people in the eye and asking what they actually need. Over the next 3 days, Alexander didn't just write a check and disappear. He stayed involved. He found Emma a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood with a year's rent paid. He connected her with a marketing firm one of his companies worked with. They needed someone with retail experience for their customer relations department with full benefits and a salary that could actually support a family. He arranged for the children to start at a good school after the holiday break, with after-school care included. But more than that, he listened. He sat at the kitchen table in that hotel suite and listened to Emma's story, not as a billionaire, doing charity work, but as one human being connecting with another. He learned about her dreams of going back to college someday, about Marcus's love of drawing, about Maya's gift for mathematics, about Sophie's imaginary friend named Mr. Whiskers. On the 4th day, as Emma prepared to move into the apartment Alexander had arranged, she tried once more to thank him. You don't understand what you've done for us, she said, tears streaming down her face. You've given us more than a home. You've given us hope. Alexander shook his head gently. You had hope all along. You never stopped fighting for your children. You never gave up. All I did was remove some obstacles. He paused, then added, Actually, you've given me something too. You've reminded me why any of this matters. The money, the success, all of it. It only matters if we use it to see each other. Really see each other. That night, Alexander didn't go to another charity gala. Instead, he began quietly visiting the streets of Madison, talking to people, learning their names, understanding their stories. He set up a foundation, not the kind that operated from a distance, but one that put people in real homes with real support systems. He recruited other wealthy individuals not with speeches about tax benefits, but by bringing them face to face with families who needed help. Emma kept in touch with Alexander over the months that followed. She sent him drawings Marcus made, photos of Maya receiving an award for mathematics, videos of Sophie singing songs she'd learned in preschool. She also sent updates on her own progress, the successful first months at her new job, her enrollment in online college courses, the small emergency fund she'd managed to start building. But more importantly, she began volunteering at Alexander's foundation, helping to identify families in crisis and connecting them with resources, because she understood what Alexander had finally learned, that true generosity isn't about the size of the gift, but about the willingness to see another person's humanity and respond with your own. On a cold evening 1 year later, Emma stood outside that same bakery where Alexander had found her family shivering and desperate. But this time, she wasn't the one seeking help. She was there with warm blankets, thermoses of hot soup, and information about shelter beds she'd personally confirmed were available. And when she saw a young mother huddled with her child against the cold, Emma approached slowly, gently, and spoke the words that had changed her life. Come here, she said softly. Let me help.